Hello, I'm here today to talk about OPAs or oral pharyngeal airways. Some indications when using these are a patient that is unconscious and does not have a gag reflex, so we don't want them to aspirate, vomit and breathe it in. Contraindications for OPAs would be if they have a gag reflex or there's an airway obstruction besides the tongue. These OPAs are meant to grab the tongue and move it forward, opening the airway, but if you have a food bolus or something that's stuck in there, don't use it. Complications would be obviously a gag reflex, we don't want them to aspirate again, and then oral trauma, say they had some sort of facial trauma, tongue lac, anything like that, that blood will end up going in the back of their airway and causing an issue or an obstruction. So to use OPAs, we need to measure from the tip of the mouth to the tip of the ear. So hang on, just turn them here. So we measure, you get your oral adjunct, your OPA, measure from the tip of the ear to the tip of the mouth. And when we insert these, we don't insert them straight down. We insert them at either 90 degrees or 180 degrees. So put it in the mouth here at 180 and rotate it facing down. Oh my goodness. Down. This mannequin is real tough. Wow. Don't put an OPA in this way either. Inserting it, rotating it, down, grabbing the tongue forward. There you go. If your patient aspirates, obviously take it out. We're going to need a suction. They have a gag reflex, which is a contraindication. That's all you need to know about OPAs. Don't kill anyone.
All right, so we're going to be looking at the jaw thrust maneuver now. The jaw thrust maneuver is a method that we use on an unconscious patient. So that is the main indication for it is an unconscious patient with suspected spinal trauma. That means that if you come on scene and no one witnessed it, it's automatically suspected trauma, or if it's, they fell from on top of a roof or were hit by a motor vehicle or something along those lines, that is a suspected spinal trauma, therefore an indication for the jaw thrust. A contraindication, there's actually not any because it's not a head tilt chin lift, so so you're really playing it more safe by doing this maneuver than a head tilt chin lift, so there's no contraindications. The only real complication with it is that it can be a little bit more difficult to do on a real patient than a head tilt chin lift. So all you really have to do to perform one is you take your, if you're at this position, which I am, you put your thumbs over the patient's cheekbones, and then you take your two index finger, or your index finger and your middle finger, you grab below their mandible and you just pull upward. And that maneuvers their tongue and their mouth in such a way that it opens their airway for you.
All right, so I'm going to be going over briefly the nasal pharyngeal airway, otherwise known as the NPA. And we're going to go over first a couple of the indications for the NPA. So essentially, the biggest indications for the NPA would be times that the OPA or oral pharyngeal airway would be contraindicated. Times such as trauma to the jaw of the patient, or potentially you can't get the tongue out of the way to get that NPA in, as well as a patient with a gag reflex, as these will not affect the patient's gag reflex. So first off, there's a couple different sizes of NPAs, kind of just varying in size. I've already got the proper size out for this mannequin. All right, so we're gonna go over sizing of the NPA on the patient. So you're gonna take the flange end that kind of comes out like a funnel, and you're gonna put it by the tip of the patient's nose, and then you're gonna measure the beveled end, or the part that's gonna be going in the patient to the patient's earlobe. So this is appropriately sized right here. And then you would go ahead and lube up the NPA. For today's demonstration, as it is on a mannequin, we won't be doing that for sanitary purposes. So then we're gonna go ahead and select a nostril. A couple things you wanna be looking for is any kind of deviated septum, one nostril being larger than the other, and you would wanna pick the larger nostril. You are able to put one in both nostril if needed, and you can also use this alongside an OPA. One thing to keep in mind is that the bevel needs to go towards the septum or the midline of the patient at all times. So if you're going in on the left nostril, you would have to rotate the MPA over. So we'll be using the right nostril to avoid needing to rotate, and we're gonna go ahead and insert the NPA into the patient's nostril. That's not very well. Oh,
Start fucking jamming that. What size is this? Remember fucking
we could use the.
Did you use the 28 on him the first time?
Yes, and it went in easy.
There you go. You can take a picture of it.
No, right there, right there.
Now I can't get back in and watch.
All right, just like that, that completes putting in the nasal pharyngeal airway on a live mannequin. NPA contraindications, you know, facial trauma, stuff like that.
All right, so now we're going to talk about head tilt chin lift. Head tilt chin lift is indicated for any patient that's unconscious and unable to protect their own airway. It's contraindicated in the event that the patient is suspected to have a spinal injury or a head injury. And just as a reminder, with both head tilt chin lift and jaw thrust, make sure that you suction the airway prior to opening it up so that you ensure that you don't allow anything that might be any foreign bodies in there to go further down the airway. Maneuver is quite simple. You simply lift the chin, tilt the head like so. Boom. Any questions?
You and your partners are dispatched to an unconscious patient.
Oh my heavens, I appear to be going into acute respiratory arrest.
T's, move over. Let's check for a pulse. Oh no, he's not breathing, but I suspect spinal trauma because I didn't see this, so I'm gonna do a jaw thrust.
The patient did not suffer from any traumatic injuries.
Hey, hold on there. He didn't have a trauma, so let's go ahead and do a head tilt chin lift.
Oh,
Scoot over, sir.
all right. That sounds good.
Don't worry, I've got an NPA.
EMT, move over. I have tools. An OPA. Wow, no gag reflex.
2, 3.
Thanks for watching. Okay.